Hello, those joining. This is Gabriel. We're going to give the other attendees, a few minutes to join. Just a couple of minutes and we'll get started. If you can see my screen and you can hear me well, please, I'd be grateful if you can let me know via the chat or the Q&A section. All right, let's get started. Well, my name is Gabriel Sang. I'm a TechSHIP specialist here at Techdinamics. And today we're going to take some time to review a webinar on return labels 101, which includes how to set up your techSHIP environment for return labels, whichever way you handle those. Return labels are a natural way to it's part of the nature of processing orders and getting issues on the way. So that's part of what we are going to be dealing with today. This session is being recorded. It will be uploaded to our YouTube channel, Techdinamics. So as soon as we finish, we're going to sort that out. And we're going to send all the attendees and those that register for the webinar a link so you can check it again if needed, or share with your team if they weren't able to attend today. So let's get started. Good. So we're going to have this really short theoretical presentation of the topic, and then we'll jump into a TechSHIP portal and see it in action. Okay. So how can return labels be printed within TechSHIP? Regardless of how you handle that from an operational standpoint, TechSHIP allows you to basically take two main paths. One of those is to print or generate these return labels for every shipment that you process over a billing account. And the other is to generate those on demand per order, okay? And within generating all these return labels for every shipment you handle through a specific account, there are two ways to do it. You can just print everything for every shipment, or you can generate those labels and then if needed, you can download individual labels or as a group from that batch if you don't want to actually print the label. So that one is a quite unusual scenario, but it is possible that a customer, not every customer will be using that return label. Well, even though you pay for it, you don't want to print it unless the customer requests for that. In some cases, typically when you have RMA, you will have to print a return label every single time. And the ship to address and ship from address for that might not be the one of the warehouse. So we're going to see how, when generating these return labels, you can use the address, which has been originally handled as a ship from for the shipment, or how to override that. So whenever the customer gets that return label within the shipment, or that you generate it later digitally to send it via email so they can print it on their end, it does not return to the warehouse, but returns to whichever point your customer wants, okay? That's just for how and what we're going to see for the scenario of generating and printing these labels for every shipment going through a specific billing account. Now, from a cost standpoint, if you take that path, the carrier is going to charge you for that return label. So obviously, having return labels printed for every single shipment that you handle is going to increase costs. So you might want to print on demand. Maybe you process a batch of 1,000 orders, and from those 1,000 orders, you get 0.5% returns, right? Someone didn't like the item that they purchased. Maybe it's broken. Maybe it's not the right model, the right color. Typical case of getting a return, right? And you're not going to spend an additional whichever amount of money, even if it's not much, per shipment, to print return labels just in case someone wants to return it. So in that case, what you do within techSHIP is identify which of these orders that require a return have this issue, and you can generate in a really easy way that return label on demand instead of having the system print and generate these labels for every shipment within or that's being processed through that billing account. So with that in mind, let's jump into a TechSHIP portal and see how it works. Okay, good. So here we are. This is my test portal. What we are going to do is push a batch of orders to process via FedEx. Today, we're going to use FedEx as an example. There might be slight variances between FedEx and other carriers, but typically it's something really, really simple, like where the field is located in the form that you're going to use to set this up. But it's not much different between each carrier. Of course, as long as the carrier supports return labels. So what we're going to do right now is we're going to push a batch. We're going to use FedEx. I have this file. We're going to fast import it, and we're going to process this batch and see what's the result of handling this processing. Okay, we got 4 orders here. Everything is a FedEx ground, as you can see. Okay, so let's go for it and see what we get from this regular vanilla setup. Okay, this setup doesn't have any return labels. Okay, so let's imagine that from one point in time onwards, someone says, well, guys, we need to start printing return labels for this client. So if I take a look at the outcome here, we're going to pick the first one. What you will see is that we only have one carrier label, right? Plain and simple. We got the ship from, we got the ship to, weights and dims. We got the, well, who's going to pay for it. Then we have the service here, FedEx ground, tracking number. In this case, we're hitting a test API. So as you can see, the barcode says sample on it. But from a production standpoint, the only difference here would be just the barcode and an actual tracking number. The rest of it is what you're seeing here, right? So we don't have a return label here. We're going to take the first path so we can review how this works. So what I'm going to do is void these orders, right? Because even if I turned on the feature after I processed, it's not retroactive. I'll need to regenerate and reprocess all the labels. And that's what we're going to do right now. We're going to jump into the billing account that we are using, okay? And we're going to set up return labels. If you want to do it through the batch, you can perfectly click in view here. If you want to do it the typical way, going through maintenance, clients, clicking on the client, editing the billing account, you're free to do so. I'm going to take the middle path here, and I'm just going to open the client here with view. So you can see which accounts I have set up and how this is set up from a broad standpoint, okay? So I got my client here, nothing unusual. I have my code, my name. There's 3 accounts here, FedEx, Campar, and UPS. And we're going to be working with the FedEx one, okay? If I wanted to print, generate and print return labels for every shipment, okay? What I should do is go to carrier options. And in this section, I'm going to find the section that says return. Okay. You'll see that there's a checkbox that says print return labels. And there are two more things here: return payment type, which we're going to review in a moment, and override return address. So right now, I'm going to click in print return labels. And this is going to ask me for an account number. As you can see, some additional fields deploy: payer country, return service code, payer account number. Okay, so I'm going to grab my payer account number because I'm going to be paying for those, and I'm going to paste it here. So this determines that, number one, I'm going to be printing return labels for every shipment that goes through this account. I could have another account, a clone of this FedEx account for regular shipments. But for those that have a return label to print, I could route those orders through here with a routing group, with a rate shopping group, with an OMR rule. There are many ways to force an order to go through a specific account. I'm going to give you an example of that by the end of the session. So over here, going back to this, I stated the payment type. Over here, as usual, you choose the type. If it's going to be the sender, the warehouse, or if it's going to be third party, recipient, taking into account which is not the consignee. In this case, is someone with a FedEx account, typically a broker, collect, or account. If it's a sub account from a FedEx main account in this case. Then the return payer country, this is associated with where your account is registered. In this case, this one is Canadian. And then we have the return service code. By default, this is going to be the same as the order. So that's how the system takes it from scratch. If the order was sent via ground, then you're going to get ground as a return service. If it was sent second day air, or express overnight, that's what you're going to get as a return service. Now, to economize in that sense, what you might want to do is say, well, I don't want the return label to be the same as the order, because if someone paid for express overnight, for example, I don't want to pay $100 to get that stuff back to my warehouse or back to whichever return center that is. So you can force it to something that you need. For example, ground, right? So whichever the origin code was will be ignored if you choose an explicit option from this list. Okay, we're going to keep it same as order right now. Okay, and then there's going to be a checkbox here for override return address. Okay, the way this works from a basic standpoint is that when you process the shipment, you're gonna have the ship from address, which is taken from the baseline account, your baseline setup, and then the ship to information is taken as part of the order. Now, when you generate a return label, these are swapped. So the ship from becomes the ship to of the original order, and the ship to becomes the ship from of the original order, right? It's a back and forth. Now, again, in some cases, you might not want to do this because let's say that you agree with your client that any returns will be handled through their facilities and their processes, right? So you are in charge of sending the original shipment, but if anyone has an issue, they should return that to another place, right? To an RMA center, to a returns facility, to a repair facility, whichever that is. So if that is the case, you will also want to turn override return address on. And as you'll see, you'll get a set of fields here that allow you to define a return name, return company, address 1, 2, city, state, postal code, and country. Okay. We're not going to take time in this session to generate both scenarios so we can make the best out of the time that we have. But you can try it on your end if you have this kind of scenario within your operations. Right now, we're all set. It's as simple as this. Go into the billing account, carrier options, turn this on, define the account number in this case that's going to pay for that, and you're good to go. You can just save and be on your merry way to process the orders again. That's what we're going to do. We're going to process these orders. I don't want to print because I don't want to hit my printer here. but we're going to process the orders and review the output in digital format. Okay, let's give it a moment so we can reach FedEx, get the shipping label and the return label for each one of these as well. Okay, let's give it a moment. Test APIs are usually a little bit slower than production ones, so we'll have to be a little bit patient. In the meantime, okay, the service that's being used to determine which service level should be used to generate the return label can be taken from two different places, and you have to be really careful with this. If the default service code of the batch is use order, okay, that means that each order will individually determine what service that's going to be. I'm going to unlock the batch for a moment and try to process again. This might be a little bit messy on FedEx's end. So in that case, you have to be extremely careful into not having orders that do have a different service level. Maybe in a batch of 200 orders, you might have some orders that go ground and some other orders that go, let's say, second the air, for example, right? So in that case, you might be risking if within your client section, you chose, let's roll down a little bit. Same as order for the return service code, is going to go straight to what each order has. Now, if the default service code is the one that determines that, then every order will be leveled to what you define over here. And you'll make 100% sure that the service code that you're using for the whole batch is the same service code that will be used, in that case, ground, for example, for every return that you have, regardless of how these might have originally come from the WMS. Okay, so we got the 4 orders processed. Let's review the output, okay? Over here, as you can see, in this case, there are several labels, okay? This is a COD scenario, okay? So we do have the regular shipment here. Okay, let's zoom in a little bit. Okay, so we have the shipping label here, COD, okay? We're gonna review the other ones, which are regular and no charge on delivery. And you'll see that this one, the second label that you get printed, says return over here. So it's clearly identified which one is a return label. Besides, of course, of the ship and the ship to and from, which you can see here, ABC company, right, to Carol Pilot, and over here is from Carol Pilot to ABC company, right? But the carrier, in this case FedEx, clearly states that this is a return label, different from the shipping label. And in this case, we have a couple of additional ones related to COD. Okay, they're not related to the return as such, but these are present as well. If we take a look at the first one, okay, we'll see that we have 2 labels. Why? Because this is not a COD shipment and it doesn't have the 2 additional COD labels at hand. But whichever the case, we have the same scenario, right? We got the ship from ABC company to Sears Canada. And then we have the return label clearly identified, shipping from Sears back to ABC company, okay? As straightforward as that. Now, what I've done right now was just to process the orders. Maybe I don't want to print everything, okay? Or maybe my customer just wants these in digital format. They want it in the email, right? So what I can do here, not to be wasteful on my labels, is process everything and then say, I want to reprint the labels, okay? I want to reprint everything. Or I want to download the labels, the shipping labels only, and print that instead of printing the pre-generated return labels as well. But these can be separately handled if you need so through this section. If I download the labels here, let me download and show you the file. If you choose labels, what you get here, as you can see, oh, okay, we do have the return labels here as well, because it's a whole set. But if you wanted to only print the return labels or only retrieve the return labels, there's a separate option for this, which is download a pre-generated return label. So let's compare one file to the other. Okay, there we go. Let's open this one. So as you can see, here we have 4, while here we have 8. Sorry, 10. Okay, because we also have the 2 COD ones. But as you can see, you can handle these separately if you wanted to. The reason why we got 4 here is because we have selected 4 orders within the batch. But if, say, for example, that Joe Doe is the only one that says, hey, you know what? I tried to ship it with a return label you sent me. It got damaged on the way, or I don't know, it's not clear. They can scan it. Can you send me one? Can you send it to me via email? Sure, that's fine, Joe. We can click over here, select this one only, okay, and then download the pre-generated return label. This is going to generate a new file, a PDF file, that when we open it, it only has that specific label from the whole batch and from the whole set of labels that was generated. Okay, so this allows us to cover printing or generating return labels from process batches as well. Okay, if you hit process and print, which is the most efficient way to handle things in first instance, instead of doing all these back and forth and going into menus, if you would just import and process and print, you're going to get your shipping labels and return labels in sequence straight from your printer. No additional button pushing, no anything else, right? But what you want in this kind of case is if you do have these scenarios of someone, for example, saying that the label is damaged, you don't have to reprint the whole thing. You don't have to download and then split the file somewhere else with a PDF editing software. You can just say, well, yeah, I just want the pre-generated return label for this order. That's it. Send it via email and you're good to go. Okay. Now, again, all these that we have in the batch here have been printed, processed and printed in a complete scenario, but for every single order. So what if I don't want to spend, let's say we get charged $150 per label, right? Per return label. So I don't want to spend $6 additional on this batch, right? Which of course, if we multiply it by a big batch to 1,000 orders, it's not pennies. It's a lot of money, right? So maybe you just say, well, I'm just going to process my batches regularly. I don't want to print return labels for every shipment. I just want to print return labels for that 0.5% of the returns that I have. So in that case, this is how it's handled. Okay, I'm going to revert the settings in the billing account that we used. Okay, I'm going to turn this off and get the account back to normal. Okay, I'm going to delete this batch. I'm going to clean it up and I'm going to import it again. We're going to process it so we can have a fresh start, and we're going to see, we're going to verify that the outcome is what we're looking for. Okay, let's give it a moment. There we go. We're in already. So what I'm going to do right now is process the batch. Typically, in your case, again, you would press process and print. So these get processed and printed automatically. There we go. Everything is processed now. We should have got 4 labels out of the thermal printer. Let's check that. Each one of these has, well, in this case, sorry, 6, because the second one, remember, is a COD shipment, has 2 additional labels, right? But it's a shipping label, no return labels whatsoever, right? But let's say that for this guy, for Scott says, well, you know what? I ordered this item, but it was supposed to be the blue one, and you guys sent me the gray one, so I want to return it, right? So he follows all the procedure in the e-commerce site, etc., does everything to get the return in place, right? And then it comes your turn to send this guy to Scott his return label, right? So the thing is that if you try to do it through here, select none, right? And we try the same process of saying, oh, I want to download the pre-generated return label here so I can send it to him. You're going to get an error message. Why? Because there's no pre-generated return label. We turned it off. But we still want to get that return label with everything exactly as it was for a regular return label. The swapped ship from, right? And two. So what we're going to do here is the following. We're going to find this order through orders history, okay? Obviously, again, this is a batch that we processed several days ago in a real scenario that this was shipped and delivered to the customer. The customer did the check, didn't like it, did the whole process to get the return, and now it's returned, right? Maybe days went by. So I'm going to go to orders history, right? I'm going to make sure that the status of the orders I'm looking for is okay because this is a fully processed order. And what I'm going to do is search it by whichever parameter it's required here, okay? Could be the pick order number. You might not remember it. So typically the easiest way to handle it is with the tracking number, okay? So that's what I'm going to use right now. I'm going to find this tracking number here in my ship data. Cool. So we got the shipment here. We'll get the client. We'll get the batch, okay? We're going to get the pick order number if we wanted to check our own records. The customer order number is here as well. We can make sure with that it is Scott and not someone else. And then what we're going to have here is a series of buttons. And one of these buttons, this one in particular, is create return. So when you click in this button, what TechSHIP is going to tell you is, okay, let's create a return label for this shipment. Now you have to tell me through which carrier and which account you want to use for that, okay? Over here again, you can choose the carrier, you can choose the account under that carrier that pertains to this client, right? You have to make sure that is the account that you want to use for this is within this client, and then create. When you click and create, what TechSHIP is going to do is going to create a new batch. You'll see that the pick order number has the original pick order number, but now it also includes return and the date and time, okay? It's 2023, 11/28 at 2/29/04, right? And the only thing we need to do is process and print. Let me process it right now instead of process and print. Again, I don't want to hit my printer, but let's see the result. As you can see, it's processed, FedEx ground. Let's check the label here. There we go, okay? So over here we have, as you can see, ship from and to, from Scott to the warehouse, okay? Again, if you wanted to generate this return label, let's say that it shouldn't go to the warehouse, right? It should go to an RMA center. I'm going to void this, okay? And if you wanted to edit anything in this order, you can do it from here. You can just click in this button, and you'll have the ship to that you can change over here. All right. So anything related to it that you need to check, you can check it this way. Ship from address, you have it there. It's already preloaded. Carry options, signature required. You'll have audit information of who did this and when. So again, you have all the information at hand here if you need to make or handle any changes, okay? But as you can see, it gets handled like any other label. The only difference is that instead of generating a label per each order that you have from the client section, you just find the order through orders history. It doesn't matter which parameter you use to filter. If it is the pick order number, if it's the tracking number, as long as you get to the order, you'll have this button to create the return. Note, okay, that this feature must be enabled by request. So if you are going to use this feature, you go to this section, orders history, you don't have it available, get in touch with TechSHIP support, and our team will make sure that this is enabled, and also will instruct you on the permissions that the users can or might need to have enabled to make use of this feature. Okay, so this is how we do it manually. Okay, from end to end. Now, one more thing I wanted to share before we wrap up the session is how to automate this. Okay, in some cases, like handling this 0.5%, you'll have to do it manually because you don't know ahead of time which labels, which orders are going to require a return label. There's no way to predict if the customer, if it's going to get broken on the way, if the customer's not going to like it and it's entitled to return the item. If you, well, you could tell if you send the wrong item, if you're uh, if you're not careful enough at the packing line, or maybe you don't have stock and you send a different one, which might be compatible. I mean, I've gotten those a few times in my life, right? And maybe it does work for the customer, and the customer doesn't return it, but maybe it is an issue, and the customer does want that's a really specific thing that they ask for. So there are ways that which allow you to streamline some of these scenarios where you need to print return labels every single time, depending on your order information. Okay, I'm going to give you a brief example. Let's say that a client that you're handling has different products, and some of those require that there is a return or that these get sent somewhere else. Okay, for example, several years ago, the market started seeing these DNA tests, right? Where you can see your ancestry, and you just you buy the item, right? You just get the pack, you test yourself, then you return it, right? So there's got to be a return label every single time there. But maybe the company selling those sells other items that have absolutely nothing to do with that test that needs to go back and forth. So you might want to have a rule if you're using OMR that says, hey, when you import that order, check the contents. And if you have any of these packs that need to be returned, I want those orders to automatically generate a return label. And for those that don't, that have items that are just going to be sent and that's it, then that's it. I don't want to waste money on a return label for every shipment. So something you could do is the following. First of all, what you're going to need is a regular account setup, okay? Like the one we have right now, right? It's a regular setup, has references, rate shopping, everything but return labels, okay? So what we're going to do here is clone it, okay? We're going to grab a functional setup and we're going to clone it. I'm going to target my test portal right now. I'm going to target my client. There we go. And I'm going to save it. So when I save it, what this is going to do is grab my regular FedEx account and create a copy of it, okay? I'm going to edit this account and I'm going to rename it returns, all right? And for this particular billing account profile, what I'm going to do is enable return labels and save it, okay? For this to work, I'm going to need the name, okay? So I'm going to copy the name and I'm going to go to OMR. I do have several rules over here already, but that doesn't mean that I can define a new rule for this to work. So what I'm going to do is add an OMR rule. So whenever the order is imported, I'm going to check the line level or maybe the order level, depending on how your WMS passes this information to TechSHIP. But this is how it would look like. let's say that we go in order level. I'm going to have conditions, and I'm going to say that whenever an order has in the SKU description the words at least one of the SKUs within the order says DNA test, okay? The way this is defined, just to go through the logic real quick, is when the order is imported, we're going to check the order level information. If the SKU description at least one of the order line items is like, that means contains, in this case, using the asterisks, DNA test, that means that it could have any text before DNA test or any text before after DNA test. That's why we use the asterisks over here. I'm going to add this to the conditions. And what I'm going to do as an action is say, use the billing account, which is called the way I just defined it. So in this case, I'm going to say, force it through the returns account and save it. So what this is going to do is, for every order that gets imported into TechSHIP, is going to take at the SKU lines, is going to try to find the DNA test in the text of the SKU description, and if it does have it, is going to send it, force it through the returns billing account profile, which has returns turned on. And for the rest of the orders not matching this criteria, it's going to be handled regularly. And it's going to go through the regular FedEx account, through the regular UPS account, whichever other carriers you have and how you define it, is going to go through there. But if and only if this is detected, then TechSHIP will force the order through the returns section. So in that case, what you can have is a client with a hybrid system where you handle regular orders as regular orders, and where you automated return labels based on the conditions that you might have. In this case, I just added one, but you can add as many as you want. You can be as broad as you want within the definition of your conditions. You can be as specific as you want within these definitions as well of the conditions. I just added one condition, but I could add as many as I want. I could say, well, if it does contain this and that and this and that and this and that, or any other of the criteria that you can choose over here. I really suggest you check our OMR webinars to see how you can use this feature in combination with return labels. But this is how you make the best out of combining these features together. So, well, this is what we wanted to share with you today. I don't know if any of you has questions. You can post them in the question and answer section, and we can deal with those in the next 5 minutes tops. But if you don't, we can wrap up the session. In the meantime, if any of you has questions and is writing those, let me give you a few closing remarks. Return labels are typically a small fraction of the operations of a warehouse. It's not that common unless it's part of the client's business. Okay, so if your client, like this scenario that I quoted or that I presented, has return labels as part of their operational requirement, that makes things typically much easier because you can predict what kind of volume, what kind of scenarios you might have, and how that affects the rest of your productivity and your budget as well in terms of printing those labels. You can charge that customer differently because you know there's going to be an additional cost up front. Nevertheless, when you do have the second scenario that we presented, where it's totally unpredictable when you're going to get returns. If you're going to get returns based on policy, right? Or if you're going to get returns based on a mistake you made, right? It doesn't matter. Whichever the case, these could be handled without much hassle, one by one and on demand, without hitting your budget and without hitting your productivity in a way that would make things hard to handle. Okay. So I hope you can make the best out of these tips and tricks that we have shared today. I really hope you don't get many returns in this peak season. I know that returns sometimes can be a pain, and even though they're part of the process, typically they're not what you want to have in your process, right? Because performance-wise, it takes time and effort from shipments that you need to get out of the warehouse. Sorry, to get out and ship them from the warehouse on a regular schedule. But the idea behind all this is that even though it's an issue, it's not a problem, which is a huge difference between one and the other. One thing is having an issue and the tools to solve it, and the other one is having a problem. So hopefully from this point on, return labels are just going to be an issue and something that bothers a little bit, but not a problem for your operations. So thank you for joining today. We'll be posting again the recording of this session shortly within our YouTube channel. And our team will let you know once it's up via our newsletter. Okay. You can also reach them if you need it outside of the time frame that we typically do so. But yeah, we'll be more than glad to for you to have it and share it with your team and anyone else that might make use of this. Thank you for your time today. Have a wonderful day and have an exceptional peak season. Bye-bye.